If you are an ambitious woman feeling the weight of burnout, you're pushing away the people that you love the most, even though you crave connection deep down. This episode is going to expand your heart and transform your life. We are diving deep into why we isolate ourselves when we're struggling and how to reclaim those precious relationships and rekindle connection, even when you've tried couple counseling or talking therapy. Now, I'm going to be sharing my personal experience with burnout and the strategies that I use to reconnect with my husband and rebuild trust. Now, if you're ready to break free from the cycle of burnout and create deeply fulfilling relationships, this episode is for you. Are you a big hearted, ambitious woman feeling completely fried by overwhelm and burnout? Do you crave a life of purpose and joy but feel stuck in a cycle of stress and exhaustion? Welcome to Burnout to Bliss, the podcast that empowers you to finally break free, reconnect with yourself, and create a life you absolutely love on your own terms. I'm Dr. Fee, and I'm passionate about helping women like you pour love into themselves first so they can actually enjoy their success and embrace their bliss. So get ready to expand your life beyond what you thought was possible in healing, love, leadership, success, purpose, and wealth. Hello, gorgeous. Let's talk about something that is all too common for ambitious women on the brink of or stuck in burnout: pushing away the people that we love the most. Now, if you've ever felt that distance creep into your relationships, especially when you're stretched thin, you're running on empty, you are not alone. Okay, I've been there myself. Remember that time that I've shared previously in previous episodes about snapping at my incredibly supportive husband, Nick, in the thick of burnout? You know, we're living up in Darwin. I was working and studying full time for my emergency exams, and I was trying to study, and I stormed out of the room fuming because of the noise that he was making in the kitchen, only to discover that it was Nick. He had a broken collarbone, his arm was in a sling, and he was trying to cut up the vegetables in a pot, okay, to make me dinner. Oh my gosh. Talk about guilt. I remember thinking, oh, what has happened to me? Who the hell am I? Like, what's happened to me? Now, the hardest part was not knowing how to restore the connection. I was drowning in resentment and guilt and sadness. You know, these emotions inevitably just spilled over, erupted, okay, jeopardizing the beautiful dynamic that we had built. And it was a period of feeling utterly stuck, powerless. Yeah. And that is a really difficult situation to find yourself in, because we work so hard, we invest so much time, energy, money, love into creating successful relationships, contentment, fulfillment, achievement, only to then jeopardize it. It sucks. Now, pushing people away can manifest in many different ways. Okay, it can be emotional withdrawal, irritability, like canceling plans, like I couldn't be bothered going out, I don't have anything left, or even just being physically present, but you're mentally checked out. Okay. And it's often a subconscious response to feeling overwhelmed, depleted, and like we have nothing left to give. It's not that you consciously want to behave in this way, right? It's often we find ourselves so incongruent with our values, what's most important to us. And that can create this massive amount of shame and guilt. Oh my gosh, like, why am I treating this person that I love this way? And here's why this matters so deeply. So, Bronnie Ware, she's a palliative care nurse, and she revealed that the second most common regret of the dying is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. People yearn for more time with their loved ones, realizing too late that relationships are the true treasures of life. It's what's most important. So why do we push others away even when we crave the connection really, really deep down? Now, as a side note, according to Bronnie Ware's work with, no, it's a mouthful, wasn't it? Bronnie Ware's work with patients in palliative care, the most common regret of the dying is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And this is why Burnout to Bliss, my 12-week program, is so freaking important, because we address the core of overwhelm, burnout, exhaustion so that you can claim life on your terms, ensuring that you don't end up living a life filled with massive regret. Now, after supporting hundreds of women in burnout to rekindle the connection within their relationships, I found that understanding our emotional nature, our emotional needs, and how our unhealthy behaviors offer a strange sort of emotional payoff. Like we get something out of it. And this can be a huge wake up call. It's like, oh my gosh, like we can see ourselves clearly. When you understand what is truly at play and you have perspective, then you know how to go about resolving these barriers, the actual issues that are getting into play, getting in the way when it comes to intimacy and connection. So when we're disconnected from our emotions, we're more likely to push away the people we love. Why? Well, because our emotions are freaking powerful. They will always win out over conscious thought, for better or worse. Okay, you've heard me talk about this before. It's so important. We're so disconnected from our hearts, and yet it's our emotions that drive our behavior. Okay, so even if you consciously want calm and connection and to be respectful and to feel loved and valued and respected, and just talk about things and move the needle in the relationship, if you're not really tuned into your heart, it can go the exact opposite direction of what you want. Okay, and you can react in a way that you just go, oh my gosh, like I was really triggered then, or oh gosh, I really spoke with so much anger and resentment, and you say the wrong things that can really just pull that relationship, like really disintegrate the trust, the faith, the 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 values that was instilled in the relationship. In a second, we can do so much damage and jeopardize the years of hard work and love and energy that we've put into a relationship, right? So let's just think about it. How often in an argument do you find yourself fighting over who's right or wrong? Like, I'm right. No, you're right. You're wrong. I'm right. It becomes an argument around who's right instead of actually focusing on what we actually want from the situation. And that's the default mode of the ego. The ego wants to be right. It doesn't matter if actually what we want ultimately is to have peace and calm and connection and tolerance and compassion in the relationship. Doesn't matter if consciously what you want is, something else, like just to resolve this and move forward with teamwork and mutual understanding and respect. If we don't know how to actually meet our emotional nature, our ego, our default is like get in the argument and rehash old things to ensure that we've been heard and that we're right and you're wrong. Right? Battle of the wills, which actually can take us away from what it is that we want, unless we're clear on what we truly desire. Deep, loving, respectful, empowered relationships. What does that mean? What does that look like? You may find yourself stuck in old patterns, rehashing over and over old arguments, needing to be right instead of focusing on what is needed to resolve the conflict and create the connection we crave, to create the understanding, the respect, the value that we deserve and are worthy of. Okay. Now, that is where having a strategy makes all the difference. It's why I teach the Lionheart framework for empowered relationships in Burnout to Bliss. It's a bonus, actually. It's a bonus that I give you to help you to communicate effectively, right? Effectively, to move forward towards the outcome that you actually desire, that is good for you and good for the other person and great for the relationship. Okay. Because who wants to waste precious time and energy feeling really resentful, feeling frustrated, feeling unheard, and going over and over and over and over the same things? Like honestly, who's got time for that? Now, without understanding or managing our emotional world, we will push others away due to fear, resentment, or unresolved negative emotions. This can be at play for you. So here's a few examples just to get a sense of why it is that we might emotionally withdraw, not reach out for help, not actually share about our vulnerability, share about what's really going on, because we might have a fear of being a burden. Okay, when we're running on empty, especially big hearted, ambitious women, the last thing we want to do is feel like we're draining others. I don't want to be a burden. We might believe that on some level, we might believe that our loved ones are actually better off without our negativity or without our problems, and that we need to fix ourselves by ourselves before we actually deserve their love and support. Like we might just have a deep sense of unworthiness, inadequacy, a sense of failure. Like we might protect ourselves also from disappointment. We might be so scared that if we let people in and they see how much we're struggling, how messy we are, that they'll be disappointed in us because actually I'm disappointed in myself. I shouldn't be like this. This fear, this judgment, it can actually cause us to isolate ourselves, even though it's the exact opposite of what you need. There might be this sense of loss of self, loss of ability to implement boundaries. Okay, when burnout is at play, it definitely erodes our sense of self. I haven't met a woman in burnout who hasn't lost their confidence, self-confidence, okay? And it can be really difficult to know what your needs, your standards, your boundaries are. You may not just have the energy to say no. You might overgive. That was me. A coping mechanism of my trauma, which I'll talk about in a second, was to overgive. Okay. But when we do it from a place of fear, it only ends up in resentment. Okay. And then what we might do is push others away to create distance that we didn't know how to, achieve, because we didn't know how to establish healthy boundaries. So we'll have this all in and then all out, right? Over giving and then just be like, depleted in resentment and like pushing away. There might also be a sense of lack of self-trust, and just trust in general. And there might be this need for control when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we don't know how to handle change, when we feel really uncomfortable, when there's discomfort or we're in the growth zone, we often crave control. Like, let me feel certain and comfortable by controlling you. And so pushing others away can actually be a way of controlling our environment and, this false sense of security, this sense of minimizing potential triggers for stress. And it just doesn't end up, we end up way out of alignment with what's most important. So basically, burnout leaves us really emotionally drained. So we may simply just lack the energy, the capacity to engage in meaningful connection, even if we desperately crave it. Like, we have an emotional need, it's non-negotiable. Like, we have an emotional need of love and connection. Okay, in fact, we know that as a child, like as a baby, a newborn baby, if we don't receive love and connection, and we do receive physical nourishment and all the things, right? The chances of us surviving is very, very low, because we need love and we need connection, touch. Okay, so when we lack the energy or the capacity to actually, be in relationship with other people, we will then push them away, even though we crave connection. Now, this is particularly important for the empaths. Are you an empath? So this is where you have this sensitivity. You can really feel another person's pain. It's actually a superpower. It is what supports us in having deep love and connection with others. But the problem is, if we don't know how to manage it, we end up feeling like empathy sucks. And I think I might do another episode about this, because this is actually something that I find a lot of women who are big-hearted, ambitious women find themselves in, are like, oh my God, I just cannot, I don't have the capacity to, show up as a healer, as a mother, as a daughter, as a friend, as a sister, because they're empaths and they just are walking away carrying other people's pain and stress. So, if you find yourself that you have a deep level of empathy, then I'm going to invite you to learn how to manage it. So, learning how to take care of myself to support my own empathy and energy was a pivotal moment for me as a junior doctor. When I got in the depth of burnout, it was the empathy fatigue that really shook me. It really shook me at the core. I would hear myself say things like, "Oh my God, I just can't." And when I noticed that I just didn't have enough to care anymore, like it's just the sense of fatigue, I was like, whoa, this is not who I am. And that was a really big wake up call. Then on my journey, I found myself in this unique position as a conventional doctor to learn about energy, energy healing. Like, oh my gosh, I was like such an unexpected world opened up to me. But those tools to support myself on an emotional and energetic level, oh my gosh, they changed my life. Okay. Absolutely. And it meant that I was able to feel light, strong, free, and have this incredible capacity to show up in my work, show up for my loved ones. And rather than feel burdened, it was an incredible joy, because it meant that I could then serve others in a really big way. So, empathy is an absolute gift, and it's essential to having deep love, loving, intimate, fulfilling relationships. But we got to learn how to manage it, okay? Because otherwise, what happens is that we fear being in relationship, giving too much, being present, holding space for others, because we're going to lose ourselves in their drama, in their pain. We're going to walk away with it. And then we can kind of become resentful of people and be like seeing them as too toxic or too negative or whatever. And we just don't have the capacity to be supportive or be, to be present and give in those relationships. Now, past trauma is important too, because if we've experienced trauma, unresolved stress responses, attachment wounds in the past, we may unconsciously, it's just like this subconscious pattern is at play where we will behave in a way in order to protect ourselves from further hurt. And that's where we'll push others away. We might test them in unhealthy, unresourceful ways that's unkind for you, unkind to them. It may seem incredibly irrational, but it's our emotional nature acting out. There's a part of us that's screaming out for attention. And there's nothing logical about it, of course. Like you'll make a lot of meaning. You'll tell yourself a lot of stories to justify behaviors and all of this, but actually it's our subconscious mind that's at play, and there's a part of us that needs profound love. Okay, this is about meeting these parts of ourselves, which is the trauma, the vasanas, the wounds, embracing these parts of ourselves back into whole again. Okay, and that's a big conversation to be having, and I'm sure we'll talk about trauma in future episodes. Okay. So this brings us to the second question that I really wanted to cover in today's episode, which is like, we know talking about the things that are annoying us in a relationship, talking about the wedge that's driving us apart, or the lack of respect, or the sense of not feeling valued. We know talking about all the things is important, but why isn't it always enough? Now, have you ever noticed, like, this is such a big, powerful question that this answer will change your life and will absolutely expand and grow your relationships in the most profound way. And I say it because I've got so much experience seeing it for myself, but also in my clients, hundreds and hundreds of big-hearted, ambitious women who have been in a situation, even before working with me, where their relationship is on the brink of divorce, and within weeks being able to transform that and shift that and coming back together. Now, it's not a guarantee, of course. I mean, there are things that may need to happen, and we're to face obstacles, of course, and in life. But I want you to understand this key principle, which is, have you ever noticed that the energy behind the words often impacts you more than the words themselves? Yeah. So two people, or I, in two different states, in a happy state or in a resentful state, can say the exact same words, but the energy of which I say them will be felt, heard, understood, experienced by you on a deeper level, and not necessarily, and some superficial levels too. And the outcome's going to be different, right? Yeah, like I love you versus I love you. Like it just doesn't have the same impact. And it's so important. I have found that real, lasting, deep, profound change happens when I resolve my emotional pain first and then communicate. Now, of course, speaking to all the gals who are perfectionists here and love to put pressure on themselves and use trainings and these incredible podcast episodes I'm sharing with you as weapons against yourself to beat yourself up. There are going to be situations where boundaries are essential and you can't always process everything perfectly in the moment. So give yourself some grace. You're doing the best that you can do in the situation with what you have and with what you can right then and there. So whatever has happened into the past, even if you've been unskillful, compassion, self-love, and self-compassion is what is actually going to support you to evolve and grow. I teach about this concept. It's the freedom to grow principle. And it's really about like, we get to give ourselves deep love and compassion when we have experienced times where we're unskillful. Okay. In order for us to evolve and grow, that's critical. More often than not, though, we have an opportunity to pause before reacting, where we actually prioritize pouring love into ourselves first in a really meaningful way. So we give ourselves the space to heal, to forgive, to resolve the pain, the trigger, the ouchiness, the heartache, this in here. You get me? Then you will show up to the conversation in a completely different way. And you know what? You will be heard. And it makes sense, right? If we communicate from a place of anger and resentment and I'm right, you're wrong, and the other person, what happens? Immediately, they're going to feel that energy and they're going to immediately go to the defensive because it's ego to ego battling it out. Now, their sympathetic nervous system gets activated just like that. And it puts them on high alert for threats. They're focused on worst case scenarios and like wanting to protect themselves, not open-hearted connection that moves the needle, that helps you as a couple, in relationship, whether this applies to not just your intimate relationships, to all relationships. Having that open-hearted connection is what supports you to resolve the conflict and move through this to reach the other side, which is an outcome that you actually want. So change is incredibly difficult in this state. When you're triggered in a sympathetic dominant state, it's so easy just to get swept up in the drama and focused on like I said, who's right, who's wrong. You lose sight of what it would look like to move forward together. And understanding this was an absolute game changer for me. I remember navigating a particularly challenging time with my husband, Nick. We've been together now for 19 years. And one particular time, it was around about the 4 or 5 year mark of being together, we were getting stuck in this cycle of conflict, like a disagreement of opinion, anger, resentment, me storming off again, getting frustrated, making ultimatums, threatening to leave. And at that time, I had come across these concepts and understanding about our emotions and energy. And I decided to try something different, like just to be curious. I wanted to experiment. This is the scientist within me. What if I approached this differently? What if there was something in my control that I could take responsibility for that would actually help me to feel more empowered and also transform our relationship to being more empowered, where both of our needs are being met. We both feel loved, respected, valued. I love Nick. Even in that conflict, I loved him and I wanted him to be happy. But in the moment when I'm triggered, I definitely wanted to be right and prove my point. So I had to step back. And I had to go within and actually implement what I was learning and the concepts. It's one thing to have the information. It's another thing to actually do it yourself. You can have a knowledge that I need to forgive him for that thing in order to move forward. But you got to stop and pause and actually forgive. there's a process to it. You know, we can catch ourselves out going, oh, yeah, I know I need to let go. I know I need to forgive and move on. I know, I get it. Mm-mm. We've got to pause and actually do it and allow ourselves. Like, I had to give myself permission to do the healing work and to really experiment with it. Like I said, like, what would happen if I actually pause instead of reacting, respond after I've done some work? And so when I came back to this conversation with Nick, I approached it very differently. I felt different about it. I had come to a state of like being more tolerant and compassionate for myself, for him. I had a bigger perspective of what was at play. I could see him. I could see him in his pain and his reactions, and how his reactions were because of his own wounded inner child and his own way of wanting to keep him safe, and why I'm wanting to keep myself safe. Because let's face it, in relationship, it can get really scary when we're experiencing, especially an intimate relationship. This is like a whole another opportunity for trust. But when you want to, in order to trust another, we got to let go of control. It's scary. It's so scary. And so being able to come into this conversation at a whole different perspective and energy and heart, we had a different kind of conversation. And his response absolutely floored me. Okay. After I shared with him where I was at in a really centered, calm, open, vulnerable way, he looked at me and he said, darling, like his eyes full of like love and tears, like, why didn't you tell me this before? What? That was his words. Why didn't you tell me this before? It was this most incredible light bulb moment for me. He simply hadn't been able to hear me before. It's one thing to speak and say words. It's another thing to be truly heard and understood. And the way that we communicate, the energy that we bring to the conversation, the energy behind our words, it plays a freaking huge role in that. And this is not just my experience. I have worked with hundreds of women, of which burnout, it is like a cancer that destroys your relationships. And I have worked with women who have made the decision prior to working with me to do like couples retreats or couple counseling and talking things out, which is there's a definitely a role for it, absolutely. But the response that I get all the time is, thank goodness I had the Bliss toolbox. Thank goodness I knew how to heal and forgive myself and him, and how to, or her, their partner, how to anchor more compassion, what that looked like, why that was important. Because then the strategies and the talking it out and the negotiations and all the other amazing strategies that therapists have in order to help resolve conflict in relationships, the feedback that I get every time is that that inner work makes the difference. They would have struggled had they not. It wouldn't have had the same outcome if they didn't know how to let go and transform how they felt, let go of the resentment, open their heart up, meet their own emotional needs so that they felt safe and secure and comfortable, trusting. If we don't know how to give that to ourselves, how do we give it to another person? You cannot give what you don't have. And there are key things in relationship, like trust, like your ability to be open, to give, to receive. A sense of safety and connection and a sense of security is important. If you feel unsafe, insecure, if you don't feel assured, if you feel a huge amounts of angst and discomfort opening up and being vulnerable, it's going to be felt in the relationship, and it's going to jeopardize the relationship, because the flow of love and energy is what's most important in a deeply fulfilling relationship. I'm not talking about just being friends and, or like partners. That I'm talking about being lovers and being well, I am talking about being friends, but you know what I mean? Not just going transactionally through the day. I mean, like really being on the same team and loving each other and cheering each other on. Like that is a process of giving and receiving. And so, in order to do that, now you can understand why our being tapped into our own heart and being okay with the vulnerabilities and the negative emotions and the fears, it's so critical. That is in our control. It's our responsibility. And it's why I always say when you do this work, the Burnout to Bliss process, it's not just for you, it's for other people. And when we pour love into ourselves first, yeah, everyone and everything benefits in our life because of this. Because of this. And it's not that conflict won't arise. It will, like challenges and differing opinions. Like that variety is the spice of life. It's important, but it's how we can hold space for when that happens and lead ourselves and support the relationship through that creates, a very blissful marriage, partnership, working relationship, you know, being mum and, being the advocate for your child, or, that supporting yourself as the relationship transitions as your child goes through the different developmental stages. I mean, this is so important. We've got to be able to meet ourselves so that we can really show up in the right way and the right energy for all of our relationships. So the truth is, our most intimate relationships, all of our relationships actually offer the most incredible opportunities for personal growth, for personal evolution. They are what place us in the classroom where we learn about forgiveness and compassion. Like we can't learn about these things without experiencing the contrast or the duality. That's why we're in relationships. And every time we have a challenge or conflict, or where we find ourselves going unconscious and we're being, unskillful and cranky and hurting, or we're pulling away, withdrawing, or we're playing out some really disempowered power dynamics within the relationships, we just get to catch ourselves, give ourselves some grace and recognize, okay, I'm in this classroom and this is important to me. So I'm actually going to make a decision to fix this and get the support that I deserve and I'm worthy of, for me, for my family, for my community, for my work, for the world. Okay. So if you're ready to break free from burnout and create like deeply connected, fulfilling relationships, then come join me in Burnout to Bliss. Like this program is incredible. And it's way more than just a personal development program. It's an absolute journey. It's an investment in yourself, in your health, in your relationships, in your future, in your career, in every aspect and element of life. And it's about saving marriages. It truly is. And strengthening families, creating a life where love and connection and all the good things like joy is abundant. That's what an ever-expanding blissful life is. And it's my invitation to you to take that first step, book a complimentary 45-minute breakthrough session with me. There is a application process for that. The link is in the bio. And let's explore if Burnout to Bliss is the right fit for you. It's been such a pleasure to be here with you today. I love receiving your feedback. So thank you to everyone who leaves comments and email me and get in touch with me on Messenger. And I can't wait to speak to you soon. So book that call and let's connect. Bye-bye. It's been so beautiful spending this time with you. If today's episode sparked something within you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the love. Are you done feeling overwhelmed and burnt out? If you're craving a curated, holistic framework that addresses burnout on every level, body, mind, heart, and soul, to get you claiming your life on your terms, then my Burnout to Bliss program is perfect. Apply for a free breakthrough session with my team and let's deep dive into your unique situation to help you reclaim your energy, joy, and power. Now, if you'd prefer to get a taste of what's possible, then come join our amazing Bliss Sisterhood. It's our low-cost, high-value monthly community membership, and you'll find the links to both in my bio. So stay tuned for the next episode where we'll unlock even more secrets to living a blissful life. Remember, you are powerful beyond measure. Take care.